In 1683, Europe stood at the edge of disaster. The Ottoman Empire, a relentless force, threatened to sweep across the continent. But one king from Poland would rise to challenge fate itself, and his victory would alter the course of history forever. In the late 17th century, Europe was a continent on edge. The Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful and feared military forces in the world, was advancing steadily into Central Europe. For centuries, the Ottomans had expanded their territory through a combination of brilliant strategy, relentless military campaigns, and sheer numbers. By 1683, their gaze had turned toward Vienna, the political and cultural heart of the Holy Roman Empire. Vienna wasn't just a city. It was a symbol of European civilization, wealth, and resistance. Its fall would mean that the Ottoman Empire had a clear path to dominate much of Western Europe, potentially altering the course of history for generations. The Ottomans' army was massive, with tens of thousands of highly trained soldiers, including elite janissaries and disciplined cavalry units. Their reputation alone caused panic in neighboring states. Rumors of their brutality and unstoppable power spread quickly, creating fear among rulers and common citizens alike. Cities in Austria, Germany, and beyond watched anxiously as the Ottoman forces advanced closer, knowing that if Vienna fell, no European power would be able to stop the empire's momentum. Messages flew between capitals and urgent appeals for support were sent in every direction, but many feared it might already be too late. Inside Vienna, preparations for defense were urgent and chaotic. Citizens reinforced walls, stored supplies, and trained what forces they could muster to resist the siege. Yet even the bravest defenders couldn't ignore the size of the approaching Ottoman army. Many believed the city would eventually succumb, not because of a lack of courage, but because of sheer numerical superiority. The threat wasn't abstract, it was immediate, visible, and terrifying. From the hills surrounding the city, scouts reported Ottoman formations that stretched as far as the eye could see, and the sound of their drums and calls echoed like a warning of impending doom. The looming threat also revealed the fragile nature of European unity at the time. Many kingdoms had their own rivalries and disagreements. Some were hesitant to commit troops, fearing the cost of war or becoming targets themselves. Others doubted that any alliance could succeed against such a formidable enemy. Political tension mixed with fear, creating uncertainty about whether a coordinated defense could ever be mounted. Leaders debated strategies in distant courts while the Ottoman army steadily approached, confident in their strength and anticipating an easy victory. This was not a battle that could be ignored or delayed. The Ottomans were not a force that could be negotiated with easily. They had conquered vast lands from the Balkans to Hungary, leaving cities in ruins and populations terrified. Their reputation for military excellence was matched only by their ability to maintain long supply lines and sustain prolonged campaigns, giving them a logistical advantage that many European armies lacked. The sheer scale of the threat made it clear that without a decisive response, Europe might face years of Ottoman domination, political upheaval, and cultural loss. Amidst this fear, it became clear that ordinary hope alone would not protect Vienna or Europe at large. A leader with vision, courage, and strategic skill was desperately needed. Someone capable of rallying forces, bridging divisions between allies, and taking bold, decisive action. The stakes were immense. If Vienna fell, the Ottomans would gain control over a key strategic point, enabling further incursions into the heart of Europe. The survival of nations, the safety of millions, and the future of European culture hung in the balance. It was into this environment of fear, tension, and uncertainty that King John III Sobieski of Poland would soon step forward. But before his arrival, the threat itself shaped the mood and actions of the continent. Every city and ruler watched, calculated, and hoped, knowing that the battle to come would not just decide the fate of Vienna, it would decide the fate of Europe itself. The stage was set, the stakes were unparalleled, and the shadow of the Ottoman Empire loomed large, creating a sense of urgency and anticipation that would define the events to come. Amid the mounting fear of an Ottoman conquest, a figure emerged whose leadership would define the fate of Europe: King John III Sobieski of Poland. Sobieski was not just a ruler by title. He was a man forged by years of military experience, political insight, and personal courage. From a young age, he had demonstrated an exceptional talent for strategy, excelling in campaigns that required both precision and boldness. Unlike many leaders of the time who relied solely on advisors or ceremonial authority, Sobieski had a hands-on approach. He understood the dynamics of armies, the importance of morale, and the decisive impact a single well-timed maneuver could have on the outcome of battle. When news of the approaching Ottoman army reached him, Sobieski immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. He understood that the fall of Vienna would not just be a blow to Austria. It would open the door for Ottoman expansion deeper into Central and Western Europe. For Sobieski, this was more than a political problem. It was a moral and existential one. He saw the threat to European civilization, the potential destruction of cities, and the suffering of millions if action was not taken. There was no room for hesitation, and Sobieski's decisiveness set him apart from other rulers who debated endlessly while danger loomed closer. Sobieski began by rallying his forces with extraordinary speed and organization. He called upon the nobility of Poland and neighboring regions, mobilizing a highly skilled army that could respond to the Ottoman advance. His reputation as a fair and competent leader inspired loyalty. Soldiers trusted him, knowing that his decisions were based on knowledge, experience, and an unwavering commitment to victory. This trust was critical. In a moment where fear could easily break the morale of any army, Sobieski's leadership became a unifying force, giving his troops confidence even in the face of one of the most formidable armies in the world. Beyond assembling his own forces, Sobieski understood the importance of alliances. Europe at the time was politically fragmented, with nations often more concerned with internal conflicts or territorial disputes than a unified defense against the Ottomans. Sobieski approached the challenge with both diplomacy and determination, reaching out to Austria and other European powers, proposing coordinated action to defend Vienna. His ability to negotiate, inspire confidence, and create a coalition was as vital as his battlefield expertise. Without this unity, even his skilled army could have been isolated and overwhelmed. As Sobieski prepared for the coming confrontation, he also focused on strategy. He carefully studied the Ottoman army's composition, strengths, and weaknesses. He knew that facing such a large and experienced force head-on would be disastrous. Instead, he planned to use a combination of speed, terrain advantage, and the shock effect of his elite cavalry, the famed Winged Hussars. His meticulous attention to detail, combined with an intuitive understanding of both human and military behavior, allowed him to anticipate enemy moves and prepare countermeasures that would prove decisive in the coming battle. Sobieski's rise at this critical moment also carried symbolic weight. He represented hope and resilience to those who feared European submission to Ottoman rule. His reputation as a warrior king was not merely about personal glory. It was a symbol of resistance, unity, and the belief that careful leadership could confront even the greatest threats. Soldiers, allies, and ordinary citizens saw in him a figure who could turn panic into purpose, fear into action, and impending defeat into a chance for victory. In taking command, Sobieski demonstrated a combination of courage, intelligence, and foresight rarely seen in history. His preparation went beyond military drills. It involved inspiring trust, building alliances, understanding the enemy, and planning with precision for every possible scenario. He turned the looming threat of the Ottoman Empire into a rallying point, reminding Europe that decisive action, guided by skill and courage, could confront even the most overwhelming odds. By the time he moved toward Vienna with his coalition, King John III, Sobieski was not just a monarch responding to a crisis. He was a force of determination, a strategist who could harness the strengths of his army and allies, and a symbol of hope for a continent teetering on the brink. His rise set the stage for one of the most critical battles in European history, showing that leadership in moments of crisis could change the fate of nations and define the course of centuries. Forming a united front against the Ottoman Empire was no small task. Europe in the 17th century was a patchwork of kingdoms, principalities, and territories, many of which had long histories of rivalry and conflict. Austria, Poland, and various German states had their own priorities, and mistrust often ran deep between them. Yet faced with the overwhelming might of the Ottoman army, King John III Sobieski knew that only a coordinated effort could prevent disaster. He set about building a coalition that would stand together despite these divisions, recognizing that unity was as crucial as military strength. Sobieski's reputation played a pivotal role in this process. Leaders across the continent respected him not just as a king, but as a seasoned strategist and a man of integrity. His ability to communicate a shared sense of purpose inspired confidence among allies who might have otherwise hesitated. He understood that fear of the Ottomans could either paralyze Europe or motivate it to unite, and he worked tirelessly to ensure it did the latter. By framing the battle not as a fight for one city or one nation, but as a defense of Europe itself, Sobieski gave the coalition a higher purpose that transcended individual ambitions. The alliance he helped forge included Austrian forces, commanded by their own generals, as well as contingents from smaller German principalities. Each group brought unique strengths to the table. The Austrians had experience defending Vienna and knowledge of the city's fortifications. The German allies contributed disciplined infantry and additional artillery, while the Polish forces, led by Sobieski himself, were known for their mobility, courage, and the shock power of the Winged Hussars. Integrating these diverse forces into a single operational plan required both diplomacy and careful coordination, as well as an understanding of each ally's culture, command structure, and expectations. Communication was one of the coalition's greatest challenges. Languages, military traditions, and strategic priorities differed from one ally to another. Sobieski ensured that clear lines of command were established, and he personally oversaw coordination between units, guaranteeing that orders could be understood and executed efficiently during the heat of battle. He also emphasized the importance of trust, encouraging allies to follow the agreed-upon strategy even when uncertainty loomed. This level of organization was vital, because hesitation or miscommunication could easily turn the tide in favor of the Ottoman forces. Another critical factor in the alliance's formation was timing. Sobieski had to move quickly, understanding that the Ottomans were advancing steadily and that delay could mean the difference between victory and catastrophe. Coordinating troop movements across distances, ensuring supplies and reinforcements reached the right locations, and synchronizing strategies required meticulous planning. Sobieski's skill in logistics, combined with his persuasive diplomacy, enabled a rapid and effective mobilization. This preparation allowed the coalition to stand together as a single, coherent force, ready to meet the Ottoman threat head-on. Beyond the practical aspects of military coordination, the alliance also carried symbolic significance. The act of standing together against a common enemy sent a message to the Ottomans and to the rest of Europe. The continent would not fall silently. Even kingdoms that might have been rivals in the past were willing to join forces, setting aside differences in defense of a greater cause. This unity not only strengthened the coalition militarily, but also boosted the morale of soldiers and civilians alike, giving them confidence that the combined effort could succeed where individual efforts might fail. As the coalition prepared for the upcoming confrontation, Sobieski maintained a balance between strategy, diplomacy, and motivation. He emphasized discipline, readiness, and the importance of acting decisively. He reminded his allies that hesitation could be deadly, and that each unit, no matter its origin, played a vital role in the defense of Vienna and the survival of Europe. By forging this alliance, Sobieski transformed the threat of the Ottoman Empire into an opportunity for European nations to act collectively, proving that coordination, trust, and leadership could overcome even the greatest challenges. In the end, the formation of the alliance was as critical as the battle itself. Without it, Sobieski's forces alone would have struggled against the overwhelming Ottoman army. With it, they were able to combine strengths, cover weaknesses, and present a united front capable of changing the course of history. The stage was now set. A well-prepared coalition, guided by a visionary leader, would soon face the Ottomans in a battle that would decide the fate of Vienna and shape the future of Europe for generations. On the morning of September 12, 1683, the forces defending Vienna faced a moment that would determine the fate of Europe. The Ottoman army, tens of thousands strong, had surrounded the city, its camp sprawling across the plains with banners flapping and drums echoing the power and discipline of a seasoned military force. From the outset, it was clear that the coming battle would be massive, chaotic, and decisive. Every eye was on the horizon, every mind weighed down with the knowledge that failure could mean the collapse of a continent's defense. King Jan III. Sobieski arrived with his army, a disciplined and highly trained force that carried the hopes of not just Poland, but all of Europe. His presence alone bolstered the morale of Allied troops. Soldiers from Austria, Poland, and German principalities understood the stakes, yet even the bravest among them felt the weight of confronting an enemy so formidable. Sobieski's leadership was calm, precise, and unwavering, instilling confidence while preparing each unit for the complex maneuvers that would be required. The battle began with careful positioning. Sobieski deployed his infantry to hold key locations and fortifications, while artillery units were placed strategically to disrupt the Ottoman formations. The Allied forces knew they were facing an enemy well-versed in siege tactics and frontal assaults, so the initial movements focused on defense, reconnaissance, and maintaining cohesion. The tension was palpable. Every soldier understood that the opening hours would be critical, setting the tone for the remainder of the day. As the morning advanced, the Ottomans launched attacks aimed at testing the coalition's lines. Cavalry charges, infantry advances, and the use of artillery created a dangerous and unpredictable battlefield. Yet Sobieski's foresight and planning kept the Allied forces coordinated. Signals were clear, orders were executed, and units adapted to shifting circumstances. The alliance forged in the days prior now proved its value. Soldiers from different regions moved in unison, covering one another and maintaining the discipline necessary to withstand repeated assaults from an army larger than their own. The turning point came when Sobieski made the decision to unleash his most powerful weapon, the Winged Hussars. These elite Polish cavalry units were renowned for their speed, discipline, and shock impact. Their charge was unlike anything the Ottomans had encountered in this battle. At precisely the right moment, Sobieski ordered them forward. With the precision of a well-trained machine, the Hussars galloped into the Ottoman lines, their wings catching the sunlight, their lances striking fear and chaos into the enemy ranks. The charge broke the cohesion of the Ottoman forces, turning their numerical advantage into a vulnerability as panic spread through their lines. Throughout the battle, Sobieski maintained command with remarkable clarity. He coordinated reserves, reinforced weakened points, and ensured that no part of the coalition faltered. His strategic insight turned potential setbacks into opportunities, exploiting gaps and mistakes made by the Ottoman commanders. The intensity of the fighting was relentless. The battle raged for hours, with the outcome uncertain, until Sobieski's decisive actions began to dominate the field. By the afternoon, it was clear that the momentum had shifted. The Ottoman forces, once confident and aggressive, were now retreating under pressure. The Allied forces pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back and securing critical positions around Vienna. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into a coordinated, unstoppable push that demonstrated the power of preparation, unity, and decisive leadership. The Battle of Vienna was more than just a fight for a city. It was a confrontation between an advancing empire and a determined coalition of European nations. Sobieski's tactics, timing, and leadership turned a moment of uncertainty into a historic victory. The Ottomans, who had once seemed invincible, were forced to withdraw, leaving the defenders triumphant and securing Vienna's survival. This battle would be remembered not only for its scale and intensity, but for the skill and courage displayed by the men who fought under Sobieski's command, and for the leadership that transformed fear into victory on the European stage. The victory at Vienna was not just a triumph in a single battle. It marked a decisive turning point in European history. Before this confrontation, the Ottoman Empire had been seen as nearly unstoppable, an expansive force capable of sweeping through territories with ease. Kingdoms and cities across Europe had watched in fear as the Ottomans advanced, often surrendering or paying tribute to avoid destruction. The Battle of Vienna shattered this perception, proving that the empire's advance could be resisted and, ultimately, reversed by strategic leadership, courage, and unity among European powers. As the dust settled and the surviving Ottoman forces retreated, the implications of Sobieski's victory became clear. For centuries, the Ottomans had sought to expand further into Central and Western Europe, capturing key cities and reshaping political landscapes. The defeat at Vienna ended this immediate threat, halting their momentum and forcing the empire to reconsider its ambitions on the continent. The psychological impact was equally significant. What had once been perceived as an unstoppable military machine was now vulnerable, and European leaders realized that, With proper coordination, resistance was possible. The turning point extended beyond military strategy to diplomacy and international relations. The coalition of Polish, Austrian, and German forces demonstrated the effectiveness of alliances built on shared objectives rather than historical rivalries. Nations that had once been suspicious of one another now understood the value of cooperation in the face of a common enemy. This realization influenced European politics for decades to come, encouraging the formation of coalitions and agreements designed to maintain balance and prevent any single power from dominating the continent unchecked. Sobieski's victory also inspired confidence among ordinary people who had lived in fear of Ottoman conquest. For citizens of Vienna and surrounding regions, the defeat of such a powerful enemy offered reassurance that their cities, cultures, and way of life could be defended. Morale soared, and the belief that courage, strategy, and unity could overcome even the greatest threats became embedded in the European consciousness. This renewed sense of hope was crucial, not just for military morale, but for the preservation of communities and the stability of the continent. In practical terms, the Battle of Vienna reshaped the Ottoman Empire's strategy. After their defeat, the empire became more cautious in its European campaigns, focusing attention elsewhere and reducing the frequency of large-scale invasions into Central Europe. This shift created a period of relative stability, allowing European powers to strengthen their territories, fortify defenses, and develop alliances without the constant threat of immediate Ottoman conquest. Sobieski's actions effectively redefined the military and political landscape, giving Europe the breathing space it needed to consolidate power and plan for the future. The personal role of King John III Sobieski in this turning point cannot be overstated. His leadership combined tactical genius with the ability to inspire and coordinate allies, turning what could have been a catastrophic siege into a decisive victory. Sobieski's understanding of both the enemy and his own forces allowed him to exploit weaknesses and maximize strengths, creating a scenario in which numerical disadvantage did not translate into defeat. The battle demonstrated that effective leadership, vision, and decisive action could change the course of history, even against overwhelming odds. Ultimately, the Battle of Vienna became a symbol of resilience and strategic brilliance. It proved that even the most feared forces could be stopped when preparation, courage, and unity were combined. The victory prevented the Ottoman Empire from gaining a foothold that could have dramatically altered the political, cultural, and religious landscape of Europe. It allowed European civilization to continue developing without the shadow of domination, preserving the balance of power that would shape the continent's history for generations. In the end, this moment in history showed that turning points are not always about the size of the army or the power of an empire. They are about leadership, vision, and the ability to unite people behind a common cause. Sobieski's victory at Vienna did more than win a battle. It changed the trajectory of Europe, demonstrating that decisive action and collaboration could safeguard nations and protect the future of an entire continent. King John III. Sobieski's victory at Vienna left a legacy that extended far beyond the battlefield. While many rulers throughout history have led armies to temporary victories, Sobieski's triumph was different. It reshaped Europe, inspired generations, and became a lasting symbol of courage, leadership, and unity. His actions demonstrated that a single leader, when guided by vision, strategy, and determination, could influence the course of history and change the fate of entire nations. Sobieski's legacy began with his remarkable ability to combine personal bravery with tactical skill. Unlike leaders who remained distant from the fighting, Sobieski was present, visible, and engaged on the battlefield. He led charges, coordinated complex maneuvers, and made real-time decisions that had immediate and lasting effects. Soldiers admired and trusted him, not just for his title, but for his willingness to share in their risks and challenges. This leadership style strengthened morale, unified diverse troops, and demonstrated that true authority arises from both competence and courage. The impact of Sobieski's victory also extended to the broader perception of Europe's ability to resist external threats. Before Vienna, the Ottoman Empire's expansion seemed unstoppable. Many believed that Europe could be dominated by its military might, and fear of invasion influenced political and social decisions across the continent. Sobieski's success proved that determination, preparation, and strategic alliances could halt even the most formidable enemy. This victory restored confidence to European nations and populations, giving them the belief that they could defend their lands, cultures, and sovereignty against external forces. Beyond military and political consequences, Sobieski's legacy was symbolic. He became a figure that represented unity in the face of adversity. The coalition he led, including Polish, Austrian, and German forces, showed that long-standing rivalries could be set aside for the greater good. Sobieski's ability to inspire collaboration and maintain discipline among these diverse allies became an enduring lesson in leadership. It demonstrated that overcoming differences and working toward a shared purpose could achieve extraordinary outcomes, a lesson that resonated throughout Europe long after the cannons fell silent. Sobieski's triumph also had cultural and historical significance. His victory ensured the survival of Vienna, preserving it as a political, economic, and cultural center of Europe. The city's continued prominence allowed European civilization to develop uninterrupted, shaping arts, science, and governance for generations. Had Vienna fallen, the Ottoman Empire might have exerted a very different influence over Central Europe, altering the cultural and political trajectory of the continent. Sobieski's actions preserved not only territory, but the broader European identity that would evolve over the centuries. The king's personal reputation grew alongside his historical impact. Sobieski became known as the Savior of Europe, a title reflecting both his military achievements and the hope he inspired. Letters, chronicles, and reports from the time emphasized his skill, courage, and fairness, establishing a record that would be remembered in histories and stories for generations. This recognition went beyond Poland, earning him respect and admiration throughout Europe. His legacy was not only in victories, but in the example he set as a leader who combined strategic brilliance with ethical and decisive action. Finally, Sobieski's influence extended beyond the immediate aftermath of the battle. His approach to leadership, strategy, and coalition building became a model for future European rulers. He demonstrated the importance of foresight, preparation, and unity when confronting overwhelming challenges. Generations of military and political leaders would study his campaigns, learning that success depends not just on the size of an army, but on intelligence, timing, courage, and the ability to inspire those around you. Ultimately, the legacy of King John III Sobieski is defined by more than a single battle. It is a story of how vision, courage, and leadership can safeguard nations and shape history. His triumph at Vienna preserved Europe, united its people, and created a model of heroic leadership that endures in the pages of history. Sobieski's name remains synonymous with bravery, strategy, and the belief that determined action can change the world, leaving an indelible mark that continues to inspire centuries later. The Battle of Vienna was more than a clash of armies. It was a defining moment that determined the fate of Europe. The Ottoman Empire, once seen as unstoppable, was halted by the courage, strategy, and leadership of King John III Sobieski of Poland. Through vision, preparation, and decisive action, he united diverse forces, turned fear into determination, and transformed a desperate defense into a historic victory. Sobieski's triumph preserved Vienna, safeguarded the heart of Europe, and proved that even the greatest threats could be resisted when nations acted together. His leadership inspired hope, strengthened alliances, and set a standard for what true courage and strategy could achieve. The legacy of this battle went far beyond the battlefield, influencing European politics, military strategy, and cultural development for generations. History remembers Sobieski not just as a king or a military leader, but as a hero whose actions shaped the course of a continent. His victory at Vienna stands as a timeless example of how determination, unity, and skillful leadership can alter the fate of nations. When Europe faced its darkest hour, it was Sobieski and his army who turned the tide, leaving a legacy that continues to echo through history. A reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, bravery and vision can change the world.